considering he's pretty much just a Nintendo doll, but smaller anyway. Ever since my Nintendo doll got an unexpected, but very much welcome feature on Earthbound Central, I've been getting many more comments on him. Most of them have been extremely kind. It's all really reassuring and makes me hyped for my future projects. I'd love to respond to each of you individually, but I really hate YouTube's commenting system, so much so that I don't even want to attempt to use it. But really, you're all my little heroes, and I appreciate it so much. This is my Ness doll. He's considerably smaller than the Nintendo doll, and more like how I initially envisioned my Nintendo doll looking before I accidentally made Nintendo so big. Ness doll's anatomy is much more true to the character's anatomy, although if I made Nintendo's limbs too long, I certainly made Ness's too short. My Ness doll, for the most part, was made exactly like the Nintendo doll, so there's not much new to say. He is 23 inches tall. Like Nintendo, he has hyperlon fiber hair, which was a wig I sewed to his head, along with some wefts to fill any empty spaces the wig didn't cover. One huge step up from Nintendo is that the Ness doll actually has a scalp. This really helps in covering bald spots between wefts and allows me to get away with making his hair less full. This drastically cuts down on the time I have to spend attaching the hair since so much less is necessary. It's genius! His shirt was done similarly to Nintendo's, but since the new doll's body is so much smaller, the shirt needed such an extreme level of adjustment that I essentially just used a t-shirt as fabric for the pattern, and wasn't just refitted like Nintendo's. His shorts, also like Nintendo's, are made from denim and feature fully functioning pockets and metal rivets I hammered on individually by hand. His face was hand-embroidered, and his nose is a cotton ball hidden under the skin. He has articulated joints in the elbows, hips, shoulders, and knees. Unlike Nintendo, however, I made a base for his head out of upholstery foam and covered it with quilt batting to maintain a soft, smooth texture. This ensured that the shape of his cheeks would be maintained. Nintendo's head was just stuffed, which made his head more like a ball. Unfortunately, this sacrifices some level of cuddliness in Ness. Ness's head is considerably more firm than Nintendo's, and worse yet, I made a foam base for Ness's torso as well, so he's not really all that fun to squeeze. I intended to utilize it as a firm base for a small PVC pipe spine to keep his head from flopping and to allow the creation of a neck. I scrapped the idea partway through because I could feel the pipe when I hugged him, so it was a waste. It's something I plan to avoid in the future, although I think I should try the pipe idea again. The upholstery foam did end up making him extremely light though, so he's not at all a burden to carry. His body was constructed with the flesh and skin method that I used making Nintendo, but for Nintendo, I used cotton interlock for the skin. Oh my gosh, for Ness, I used polyester. What was I thinking? For the sake of getting a more accurate color for the skin this time, I used whatever stretchy fabric I could get my hands on that was his skin tone. Ugh, it's not nearly as soft or cuddly as the cotton I used for Nintendo. Lesson learned, I will never use polyester to skin a doll ever again. It also wasn't at all very cooperative with ladder stitching. Well, trial and error, I guess. I actually finished the doll in August of 2014, but I've been holding off on sharing him with the world due to disappointment in myself. I'm really ashamed of how his hands came out. They're too big and his arms are too short. The joint articulation also isn't as sensitive as Nintendo's, which I blame on the tightness of the skin. I've been meaning to remake his arms, but once I deem a project complete, it's hard for me to be motivated to go back and make changes. I'd rather just make a new Ness from scratch. Anyway, I never did make his backpack. Maybe if I ever remake him, I'll include his backpack. Ness also doesn't have a music box like the Nintendo doll does. My Ness doll kind of reminds me of receiving the wrong order at a restaurant. It's not what you expected and it tastes mediocre, but you eat it anyway because you're hungry and don't want to embarrass the restaurant employees by complaining. It's really unfortunate because you were really looking forward to that evening out. But whatever, he looks damn good on my shelf. I initially designed the shelf with the intent of displaying Nintendo in the middle, but he came out too big. Ness fits right on it though, on his own little throne. I recorded the entire process of making him as well as the expenses. One of the pages here is actually the progress of a cosplay I'm making, which you can see if you look closely. Ness cost about $100 in materials and 121 hours of work? What? That's also not taking into account the hours spent that ultimately didn't fall through. For example, I put myself under extreme pressure to finish him in time to show him off at Dragon Con, and a couple of nights before or so the convention I was working on his shoes. It turned out the pattern I made was a total flop and wouldn't sew quite right, so several hours of work were down the drain. I restarted and worked through the night. I had to go to work in the morning, and I finished my goal for the night by the time I had to get dressed. I looked through my notes, and apparently I didn't record that happening because it wasn't relevant. I only included the time I spent working on pieces that actually ended up as part of the final product. Gosh, 121 hours? I gotta learn to work faster or something. Jeez. Although that does include the time I spent sculpting him and making a pattern, so if I were to make a duplicate of the same doll, it would take considerably less time. Here's another comment I got on my Nintendo doll video. I will buy this for $60. It cost me between $150 to $200 to make Nintendo. How? Upholstery foam, hair, jersey knit rayon, denim, muslin, cotton interlock, fiber-filled stuffing, blue calico, red calico, white thread, sound box, screen printing paint, fabric glue, his shirt, socks, embroidery floss, jean rivets, snap buttons. All these little things end up adding up in the end. $60 doesn't even cover the materials cost, let alone the labor cost. These are serious dolls for enthusiasts, the kind of people with a strong passion for bringing fantasy to life, such as myself, not some little plush to be tossed in the closet. Thank you for your interest, though. I really appreciate it. I'm very interested in making and selling dolls to the small market of people who are looking for dolls of this level of detail. I didn't want to admit to spending so much money making Nintendo, but I will say it was probably the best $150 I ever spent. He makes me happy every day, unlike, say, a cosplay would. I also make fursuits, and wearing them and showing them off is extremely satisfying and fun, but I can't do it every day. For the most part, a costume just sits in the closet until the next convention, or Halloween. But a doll can be hugged every day. Dolls are worth more in that regard, I personally think. Even though I'm not very proud of my Ness doll, I still love sharing my life with him. It's better to have made him and learn from my mistakes than have never made him at all. I guess that's all I really have to say about that. Now that I've made Minton and Ness, I'm pretty much obligated to make Lucas now, huh? That reminds me of another comment I got. Well, thank you for asking, you sweet sugar lump. My project goals for 2015 include another fursuit, my Luca Allen Smithy cosplay, a basic pattern for customizable, more practical dolls, and a really big, ultra-elaborate, kind of unsettling OMG you've lost your mind doll of Mr. Wedgwood. I love him! I've taken a buttload of notes and feel over my head about it, but it's something I've really got my heart set on. And, I guess I'll make Lucas too. Maybe after. Maybe before if I get too intimidated. Nobody cares about Lucas! Oh. Well, this changes things.